Okay, we're going to have a little look at, we're going to start actually with our construction now. I've got something on my zipper, not quite sure what. So for the first part, what we're going to need is our front exterior panel, our front lining panel. So that's the piece without any of the pockets on, because mostly people want the pockets at the back of their bag. If you prefer it the other way around, then use the piece with the pockets on. Very much personal preference. And your prepared zipper. So you remember we did the made the corners on the top, the nice 90-degree angles. Now what I will do before I go any further is I'm just going to put a few stitches through the other end of my zipper. Now the zipper length that's suggested in the pattern is too long for what we want to do. However, it's a lot easier to do this with a longer zipper than it is with a short one. So I think, although it is wasteful, I think it's a better method of doing it, and cut the zipper down afterwards. Using a short zipper on this is just a nightmare. So I've just popped a few stitches through that end of the zipper to stop it from pulling off. So first things first, along the top straight edge of your bag, and that's the one that's got these curves in it, and we didn't stitch that, we didn't baste it. We're going to make marks that are 1/2 inch in from this corner. Now I've already actually put my pins in, and I find it's easier to do this, to literally just pop a little pin in at a 1/2 inch point. Just find I can take more notice of it with a pin just put through. So that's what I do. So I'm going to take my prepared zipper and I'm going to open it up so that the zipper pull is probably a little way from the end, but not too far from the end. And I'm going to lay my top edge of my zipper. So if you see the zipper there is right sides down, let me just close it up again so you get a better idea of how that zipper's laid. The zipper is right side down, and you can see that this folded end sits up against that mark that we've got. So that 1/2 inch mark. And I'm going to undo my zipper again, and I'm going to clip this in place right the way along this top edge. So the edge of the zipper tape is along the top raw edge of my fabric. And I'm going to clip it all the way along to that second pin that I've got in there. Now I'm just going to make sure that it's absolutely spot on, which it does appear to be. I'm going to take my first clip off, and I'm just going to pull that pin out because I don't like stitching over the top of pins. I'm not a dressmaker, and I know dressmakers do it. It scares me. I don't use pins very often, to be honest, so I just like to pull them out once I know I've got everything in place. And I'm going to stitch along this top edge using a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. And all I'm doing is securing my zipper, and I'm stitching from the end of the zipper, not right the way across from the end of the panel. I've got a bit of thread there that's caught, and I'm going to stitch down the side of the zipper. Until I get to where that second pin is, and then I'm going to stop. I'm going to back stitch a couple of stitches once I get to that point. So I'm just going to mark with got my awl sat in there so that I can see when I've got to the exact point where that pin is. I've just done a couple of back stitches, then I can remove that pin. Let's get rid of my... So there you go. Now if I put the zipper properly, you can see that it's now attached along the top there. And my zipper pull is on the reverse side, so the zipper is right sides down. And I'm going to take my lining panel, I'm going to just open up my zipper again. But what I'm going to do is at this end where we stopped just a little way from the end, I'm just going to bend my zipper out of the way because I don't actually want to stitch my zipper in place. So I'm going to use another pin just to hold my zipper tape out of the way. And you'll see that this bit will bend upwards, bend over because you're kind of curving it. Don't worry, as you get to that, you can kind of hold it down with your awl just to hold it, to stop it from curving over like that. So our zipper is now bent out of the way. Now if you're using faux leather, you'll need to pull it down and clip it, because if you put a pin through it, then there'll be a disaster and you'll have a hole in your bag and you won't thank me for that. And you're going to take your lining panel, so this is the front lining panel without any of the pockets on, and you're going to line it up along that top edge and clip it in place. And then we're going to stitch right the way across the top edge. So from one side, from that sort of curve to the other. Now at the beginning and the end, I like to do 3 or 4 stitches of back stitching just to secure. As you probably already realised, my zipper was open, so I'm not going to have to worry about my zipper pull getting in the way. And that's the advantage of using a slightly longer zipper. So as I come to this end, I'm just going to use my awl to make sure that that zipper isn't curved upwards there where I've bent it round the corner, or made a sort of a curve in it. I'm just going to stitch down to the very end. Back stitch a little bit. Now I can trim off that zipper. And everything's looking great there, so I'm just going to remove that pin. And at this point, I can go in and I can trim out all of that foam from inside of that seam allowance. And you can see that I do that again with my scissors. I use my big scissors, and my scissors are kind of flat onto the foam. If you use fusible fleece, you don't need to do that because this is not in the seam allowance. But if you've used foam of any sort, whether that be headliner or Styleville or any of the other sorts of foam, you will need to trim it out of that seam allowance so that you don't have any foam showing. That will make top stitching a lot easier. So there we go, that's the first side of our zipper looking rather beautiful. So now we're going to take our second exterior panel. So this is the back panel of your bag. We've done exactly the same at the top and made those 1/2 inch marks. And what we're going to do is we're going to lay the first panel, and I've pulled the lining so that it's behind, so it's on the wrong side of my front panel, because I think this shows it better so that your zipper is kind of, let me just clip those so that that zipper sits nicely, and I'll just clip it out of place in place so that you can actually see it better. So again, with your zipper laying right sides down. And if you find this, if you're concerned about getting this twisted, then just do the zipper up so that you can see exactly how it's going. So we're going to move our panel up, and we're going to do the same thing again, in so much as we're going to ensure that the 90-degree angle on our zipper sits at that 1/2 inch mark there. And it's essential that these marks match up, because if they don't, then when we close the top of our bag, it will all be ever so slightly wonky. So I'm just gonna, now I've got that first one in, I'm just gonna undo my zipper, because it's a lot easier to clip this when the zipper is undone. All you need to do is to keep looking to make sure that there's no twists, so that your zipper stays nice and smooth and flat and not twisted. So I'm just going to carry on, and I'm going to clip my zipper to the top of the back of my bag. In exactly the same way as we did with the front. And I'm going to start my stitching at that pin, so that 1/2 inch pin at this end. Make sure your zipper is pulled out as tightly as it goes, because you don't really want to pucker it. You don't want it to pucker as you're stitching or stretch. Let's just get that thread underneath there. We don't need it. And again, I'm stitching from that pin. So once I've got my foot down, I'm just going to remove that pin, just in case I stitch over it, because I don't want to. Just a couple of back stitches to make sure that I'm secure. Now, whilst I know that a lot of people like to follow videos, I think it's a really good lesson to just not to just follow the videos, but to also read the pattern at the same time. So I'm not going to always give you the seam allowances in the videos. Sometimes you'll just have to go and look for them, because then you'll know that you've read the pattern as well. And I think it's a really good skill to learn. So there we go. I can take that second pin out. And we're going to do the same thing again as we did before with the zipper, in so much as we are going to bend it out of the way. This gets a little bit more tricky, not so much tricky, but you've got this bit here and the back bit now. So you've now got two pieces of bag that you've kind of got to keep control of. So I'm just going to bend my zipper out of the way and pin it in place, just to keep it out of the way. As I say, don't do that if you're sewing in faux leather or something that will mark, or cork, or any of those sort of things, because that would be a disaster. I'm going to take my second lining panel, so my one with my fabulous pockets on, and I'm going to lay it right sides together with my back panel matching up those top corners. So effectively what I'm making is a zipper sandwich. So I have my zipper between my exterior panel and my lining panel. And this top corner here is the one where we've got that bend. So I'm just going to use my awl to make sure that the zipper tape sits nice and flat onto the lining, onto the exterior panel, on that curve, before I do my stitching. So I'm going to stitch just a little bit of back stitching at the beginning there. And I'm not using my zipper foot for this, because this is quite a narrow foot that I'm using, so I don't need to use my zipper foot. Depending on the size of your general sewing foot, you may well need to use your zipper foot. Otherwise you'll just end up with a really gapey kind of looking zipper at the top. So Do try and abide by the seam allowances because they're there for a reason. So there we go, that's the second side attached. We can trim off the excess bit of zipper there. And again, now this is where it all gets a bit kind of, because you've got like, oh, how have I got two bits now? We're just going to trim off the foam inside. And you are only trimming off the foam, you're not trimming any of the fabrics. And I have to say that these little bits of foam that you trim out of the seam allowances, you can throw away. They have no purpose at all. They just clog up your room. If anybody has got a great idea for how to use the slithers, and they are literally slithers, please do let me know because I'd be fascinated. So there we are. If I just pull that lining piece to the back, now what we have is our two exterior pieces, each with a lining piece attached and a zipper in the middle to boot. How exciting is that? So I'm going to take that pin out and I will come back to you and we'll look at how we start to actually construct the exterior of our bag.